Hello again, and thank you for joining us for today's Tech Talk. I am Anna Donnelly. I'm a Services Product Manager for Microsoft Services here at Insight. I am joined by Joe Flynn. Would you introduce yourself, Joe?
Thank you, Anna. Joe Flynn, Services Director within Insight's Connected Workforce.
Thank you. So this is a little bit of a continuation of our Tech Talk from last week, where we discussed the differences and the value of E3 and E5 licensing for Microsoft 365. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and then what the actual journey looks like when you are implementing tools and features and solutions in your E5 license. So last week we talked a little bit about the confusion between E3 and E5 and what the value of E5 is. So let's just talk a little bit about a refresher. So where are most companies at? What's the most value that they're getting from their E5 SKUs? If we want to talk a little bit about that before we get into what that journey looks like, just to kind of set the stage, Joe.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look at the E5 today, at least a bundled SKU of E5, it consists of many great products. Where most value lies for customers, and at least where a lot of confusion lies also is where the value is, it's on the security side. The E5 SKU has security products. If you look at the Office 365 stack, you have Defender for Office 365, which consists of DLP, safe links, safe attachments. You have the E5 SKU within Windows 10 that consists of Defender in the cloud, also advanced security capabilities at the OS level. And then lastly, you have the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite E5, which has Cloud App Security, Azure Information Protection, many products that tie up as to an entire ecosystem that all talk together, and you get the benefit of having everything talking together. And when it comes to security policies and other aspects that you want to drive within your organization.
Great. That's great. Thank you. So then as we're talking to customers, they get to their E5, they decide they're going to make the investment. What happens next? What does that, we call it a journey. What does that even mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the one thing we realize when people buy the E5 SKU is a lot of times they're not sure either how to consume, or they try to consume too much at once. And understanding, and you nailed it, Anna, when you said it's a journey. It is a journey. You're never implementing an entire E5 SKU just in a couple of weeks, especially if you're an organization of 500, 1,000. As you shift up the amount of users, that journey is going to extend over time because it is user impacting, or can be user impacting. So you want to take it slow. You want to understand the impacts, and most importantly, you don't want to disrupt the business.
How disruptive? When you say disrupt, what do you? What are ways that it is disrupted? How does the journey impact that? How do you normally approach it in order to make sure that you're giving everybody the best experience, you're getting your return on investment, and you're kind of addressing everything that you just talked about? What does that look like?
Everyone's journey is going to be different. And many companies I speak to, I'll walk you through a sample journey. But again, depending on where you are in the cloud today, if you're more on premises than in the cloud, like I said, the journey is usually very specific to the customer and detailed to a specific customer. But most customers, if they're on premises today and just going to the cloud, the journey is going to start with productivity. It's going to start with getting your identities in the cloud. Use with the E5 SKU, make sure you secure those identities. The identities are the front door to the entire organization. If your identities are compromised, they're going to get access to devices, they can get access to locations, they can get access to data that you don't want. So implement the E5 capabilities of multi-factor authentication, cloud app security to monitor end user sessions, and be able to secure what happens with the user's identity based on where they are or where they're trying to go to.
So is the identity piece, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. The identity piece is the foundation of that. That's the thing that you absolutely have to do first to move on in the journey. But otherwise, are these all things that need to happen consecutively? And I know that there's more in your example there.
Yeah, consecutively is a difficult term to use. Identity is the core to everything. Like without an identity or a user account in the cloud, you're not accessing email, you're not accessing OneDrive, Teams, all those security capabilities. So customers have to either create cloud identities or synchronize their identities from on-premises into the cloud. But that always is the baseline to everything from a cloud tool perspective.
Great. So what happens next then?
And so as you shift and you have your identities in the cloud, the productivity suite is first for most customers. Email, OneDrive, that seems to be what every customer wants to go to first. Now you're leveraging the cloud, you're getting the features and capabilities of what the cloud has to offer, synchronization of your files into OneDrive, but security has to come into play. So if you look at the E5 SKU for Defender for Office 365, you have safe links, safe attachments. So when a person sends an email with an attachment or a link, it gets scanned prior to your end users clicking on it. You have DLP, data loss protection, where everything you can validate whether it's going out or in based on what is being sent and the context of what is being sent. So once you have your productivity side secured, then that's where the roadmap will shift. And this is where it depends on the direction the customers are going. If a customer has already implemented Teams and they're using Teams, then I would drive my journey towards securing the Teams environment, securing the data, securing what users are doing. If they're not using Teams, I would drive it towards modern management now, securing the device, securing where users are accessing it from. So that depends on the path. Now, if we are going the Teams first route, I would look at the E5 SKU of implementing things like cloud app security. So monitoring where users are logging in from. Are they logging in from risky locations, right? Are they trying to download too much data? If you also look at Azure or Microsoft information protection, Teams is a collaboration platform, right? It allows you to share data with internal users, but also external users. The most important part of that data is you want to be able to leverage the Azure information protection or Microsoft information protection and tag the data. So now you can determine where is the data going, who's accessing the data, and most importantly, you can revoke it. And this is where you get the security of Teams with DLP, safe links, safe attachments. Everything you set up for your email and everything else previously automatically works in Microsoft Teams. So the E5 SKU, you're getting the integration and the consumption of that ecosystem all up together. Once you have Teams and once you're comfortable with the productivity side, now we can start shifting towards the modern management, leveraging the Intune or the endpoint manager side of the cloud. But most importantly, now pulling in things like the CASBs of the world to talk to Defender ATP or Defender for Windows 10. So if a device has a virus, if the device has been compromised, you can block that device from accessing your data. You can block the device from even logging into the cloud at that point. Or most importantly, you could force a user's password change on that device, even though they may not be connected to a corporate network, simply because they have a cloud identity. All of this technology and the journey you're taking, it's going to be different for you, no different than it is for our company or another company. So these are the conversations you have to have is where are you looking to go first? And then steer that journey that's going to be the most beneficial to your end users, meet your business requirements, but also have quick turnarounds. Don't try to do everything at once. It's not going to be practical. Take small chunks and move down the road so you're completing that journey as soon as possible, but not disrupting your end users like we previously stated.
Yeah, I feel like for those organizations that really kind of quickly threw together a collaborative solution, the security components and securing that experience for end users, I think is a really, great kind of first step, or one of the things that maybe our clients should look at first.
I agree. And as much as we talk about the journey of the technology, I think the technology only takes it so far. Part of that journey is absolutely the end users. And this is where I'm actually going to flip the script right now and turn the question back to you is where do you see in this journey the end user involvement come from?
Well, if you are interested in getting any kind of a return on your investments, and that's not, just making sure that folks are using things. I mean, there are pieces of the Microsoft 365 license from the end user perspective that can improve the way that you do business. There are productivity gains to be had, but obviously none of those things are going to yield any kind of a return if they don't adopt, right? So adoption is a huge piece of that. And we talk a lot about end user adoption and the capabilities that exist in Microsoft 365 from a productivity perspective. I mean, in our own department here, we have been able to automate processes that have saved us significant amounts of money. I feel like you could talk a little bit more about that, but that's all using low, no code solutions that, previously you would have needed an entire development team to get accomplished. I mean, we've talked to clients whose development teams didn't understand the capabilities of what is in the productivity suite, things like, Power Automate, Power Apps. And, we're able to really be a lot more efficient. If you're not telling your end users about these sorts of things, they're not going to know, they're not going to use it. You're not going to get the return on investment. And the thing that I want to really kind of talk about today is that starts with an attitude of empowerment from IT. And when we talk about adoption and managing change and all of that, I feel like too often IT is left out of that picture because it is assumed that they are just going to adopt whatever it is that comes their direction. But it's more than that from an IT perspective. I feel like we have a responsibility as technologists to take the information and the tools that are available to everyone in an organization, take that to the end users in a way that's consumable, and encourage them and empower them to use those tools. Don't make the assumption that things are too technical for any particular part of your organization to consume. You never know who's there, and leading with the assumption that they will adopt is really the right way to go. Get involved, get an understanding of the needs of your business, because IT is the business now. It's not just a cost center that sits off to the side. So empower those users. That's really the best way that you're going to get, you're going to take it that extra mile where your return on investment is concerned.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you look at from an end user perspective, which is myself, things like you said, Power Automate, I would have never have known, and until I tried it. And you always got to start small. Like I said, it's even the journey. It's small, but start with little things, and you'll see the end users will slowly start increasing their capabilities, especially with a lot of the no-code, low-code pieces of the Microsoft stack, just to make their job much easier and more efficient.
And the way that I like to think about that in particular is when you start talking about things like Power Apps and Power Automate and all the things that you can do in SharePoint, people start no, what if my users ask me a question about it? What if I have to end up supporting it? And the analogy that I use is 20 something years ago, when I started in the business world, if you knew anything about Excel, about how to write formulas and VLOOKUPs and this and that, you were considered to be way ahead of everybody else. I think the second real job that I got was just based on my skills in Excel, and it was like, whoa, this really cool thing. These days, it's kind of an expectation, right? If you're coming into a knowledge worker role, you have some knowledge. You may not be able to run queries and all the kind of advanced stuff, but there's an expectation that you at least understand what it can do, and basics on how to use it. And your end user population is not coming to IT for support for those types of things. And that's the evolution of these tools. If you look at it in that way and you encourage your end users to look at it in that way, they can really improve the way that they are doing their jobs, the way that they do business.
No, completely agree. And thank you, Anna, for today. Thank you, everybody, for watching today's Tech Talk, and looking forward to discussing more technologies and customer journeys with you. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks, guys.